Hey guys, welcome back to Teen Muscle Radio and episode number 31. So today I'm very excited to be joined by Corinne Ingman, and Corinne is basically the second part of the awesome Trained by JP, and we were lucky enough to be joined I think in December. It seems really close, but I think it was as long ago as December. We were joined by Jordan, and Jordan was amazing. We had one of the best episodes, and I think it's one of the most viewed episodes, so I'm really looking forward to speaking to Corinne. And just to give Corinne a little bit of a brief intro for those that sort of, again, you must have been sort of living under a rock to not know Corinne and her shredded glutes, but Corinne is a very accomplished powerlifter and bodybuilder, competing in women's physique, and obviously I think you've done raw and equipped powerlifting. Is that correct, Corinne?
No, only have done raw.
Just raw.
I've done raw with knee wraps, but
Okay.
I've never done suited.
Okay, cool. And yeah, very accomplished in both. Some crazy lifts to go with a crazy physique, and alongside that, extremely knowledgeable. And just have coached a whole array of athletes. Am I right in saying that you coach both male and female through Trained by JP, Corinne?
Yeah, that's correct.
Yeah, cool.
Anyone who's willing to work hard.
Yeah, no, I can imagine that. Cool. So yeah, I'm very awesome guest today, guys, and we are primarily going to touch on fat loss for females in this episode. So a lot of the questions will be protruding to female contest prep, and how Corinne would potentially set up female fat loss phases, as I think that this is a topic that not only Corinne will be very knowledgeable and very experienced on, but also is sort of overlooked and not discussed as much in the fitness industry. So it'd be great to get sort of some resource out there for girls that are looking to get extremely peeled. So Corinne, first off, if you could just give us a little bit of a roundup on sort of your competitive history, and what it sort of took you to get from the sort of competitive athlete that you were in the other sports that you played, because I know you were very competitive in other sports prior to bodybuilding. So what it took you to sort of get from there to the stage, and just give us a roundup of that, really.
Okay, thanks for having me on.
Right.
I've got a lot to live up to, obviously, with Jordan's amazing podcast, so I'll do my best. Okay, so me in brief, always been really quite sporty. I did gymnastics and kickboxing primarily in my youth, both to a good competition level, but nothing crazy. I went to Loughborough University. I didn't actually own a gym membership at all until I met Jordan at university.
Wow.
He obviously was very into, he was actually in the prep for his first bodybuilding show as a junior. So I got bored of watching him train. So I thought, sod this, I'm going to give it a go. And that's when I bought my first gym membership and got into training then. Awesome. So competition wise, I did my first competition in 2012, and that was at that was a UK BFF. It was in the figure category. And I came third. That was at the Body Power show.
Okay. Awesome.
After that, I then embarked on my first powerlifting meet the same year, I believe, at the latter end. Mm-hmm. And that simply came about by training really hard. Jordan's always taught me from the start, so I had a good teacher from the off, if you like.
Yeah, sure.
And he literally just said, "Do you fancy doing a powerlifting meet? You know, you're quite strong." Mm-hmm. I was like, okay. It wasn't anything I'd ever pre-thought about, to be honest. Mm-hmm. We entered the comp, and that was that. I did really well. And then it escalated from there, really. I loved the diet and training elements. It came very easy to me to stick to a diet. I really enjoyed it. Yeah. And then I did a bit more powerlifting in 2013. Mm-hmm. That was when I won my first European title for bench press.
Awesome.
That was in the June, so that was after about a year of proper training. Mm-hmm. Then I did NABA in 2014, and I came second at the British, and then I did the Universal later that year, and I came sixth in that competition. Mm-hmm. Then I I did the powerlifting world championships that year as well. I'm trying to piece it all together in my mind. I can't remember the dates and things.
So much.
Yeah, it kind of we jump in and out, and yeah, it's just been a crazy few beginning really to my career. And then 2015, I did UKBFF, the women's physique category.
Yeah.
I didn't actually look great for the show.
Okay.
We sort of missed the peak a little bit on that one, and I wasn't rewarded. I wasn't placed at all, and rightly so. And then again last year, which was 2016, I then tried the British again. Sadly, again, I didn't get placed there. So I did a PCA show at the latter end of the year, and I won that one.
Yeah.
And then I went on to do the WFF 2016 Worlds, and I won that one. Actually, won my pro card in that category, in that division, and that was brilliant. That was great, and I think that was probably my best look to date.
Yeah.
And amongst this, I did the Europeans in 2015 for powerlifting, and that was in June, and I won that, and won the overall in that as well.
Yeah.
I then last year, at the beginning of the year in March, I went over to Melbourne for the Arnold Classic, and I competed in the Pro Raw powerlifting meet, and that was an invite-only professional meet. And that's when I took my 502.5 raw total, and that at the time was the highest UK female total across all federations. And then not sadly, because she's a great powerlifter, but Lisa James currently now holds the highest one, but I've every intention to get that one back. But I haven't competed in powerlifting since last March.
Okay.
So that's it in brief.
Amazing. In brief,
It's not in there, but lots more to come.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, what stands out for me is the amount that you've done in such a short period of time. Like, only getting into training recently, and then just sort of spurting onto both powerlifting and bodybuilding stages. It's awesome. And then again, I think what people can take home from that is that, if anyone follows Jordan, they'll know how much he preaches the basics and the big compound moves with regards to not only how well they are from sort of developing movement patterns, but also developing a dense physique. And that's obviously something that you've displayed both, with being able to get world records. That will mean your execution is nailed, and then also transferring that into a crazy physique is part and parcel. So it's it's an awesome journey, and I think a lot of people will probably take some notes from that for sure in terms of what they should potentially be doing. So Corinne, first question really is, we know that with females, when it comes to that pre-stage build-up of gaining some tissue, I see it a lot recently where sort of females are more rushing into getting onto the stage and not really spending enough time investing on building their physique and sort of getting a foundation there. So from like a muscle gain perspective, what would you say in terms of like the length of time people should be training, or at least having a stimulus there, until they sort of look at themselves and think, okay, right, I'm at the stage where I could potentially compete? And do you think would you agree that maybe people are rushing things at the moment, and why do you think that's happening?
I mean, well, for a start, I think it's the same principle for male and female.
That's a good point, yeah.
So, I mean, I try not to distinguish too much, because it's the same process, and I believe it's the same mindset that everybody should have, despite gender. So I think firstly it's very person dependent, and it also depends on the category.
Okay.
If you are, obviously I compete in the more muscular areas, the more muscular categories. So obviously if you're a female who hasn't really weight trained before, and you want to develop a more muscular physique, that is going to take more time to gain the level of muscle mass required. So you would obviously need a longer phase to build the muscle mass before you even considered stepping on stage. If you obviously you're doing one of the smaller categories, bikini or figure, and you've already got a certain amount of muscle mass, your off-season phase, sort of in inverted commas, would and can be a lot shorter, as you simply don't need to develop the same amount of tissue.
Of course.
But I do believe that people are rushing to the stage, and I think that's largely just down to the sort of craze that we're living in, that everybody wants to step on stage and everyone wants to compete. And that is absolutely fantastic, because I love it. It's great. There's no better feeling than getting a sparkly bikini, slamming up and getting on stage. And I really believe that having set goals for most people is brilliant. It's a really good incentive and a really good focus to your training, to your dieting, and it keeps you on track. Agreed. So it's great to have a target. But yes, I do believe people, because of the way that social media sort of promotes these rapid transformations, people do believe they can go from zero to hero in 8 weeks because they've seen a picture of somebody else, and that simply isn't the case for 99% of people. So I think that it's great to target something, but maybe give yourself as a rough guide, maybe give yourself a year. Say, okay, cool, I'm going to get really regimented with my diet, my training. I'm going to enjoy this process, ensure that I love it and want to do it, because there's a lot of people that jump into a comp prep, and I kind of feel that 6 weeks through, it's making them more miserable than happy. So it's great to get solidified with an off-season phase at the beginning of the year, and maybe target a later show. So you know that you love it, you know that you're bang on the process, and you can either be coached or coach yourself, and then commit to a show. And then that should give you enough time to set yourself up from a muscular perspective, but also from a dietary perspective and an adherence perspective. So then you've kind of covered all formats there. So you know you're going to enjoy it, peak, and it's going to be a really fantastic experience rather than a rushed, potentially stressful and unenjoyable experience, which it should never be.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I think that, you know, from a time perspective, people need time to, like you said, build the mindset and sort of fall in love with the bodybuilding process. Absolutely. Of like eating the meals, doing the training. Like if you're not in love with eating the meals, doing the training, sleeping, staying stress-free, if you're not in love with that when you're in a surplus, I don't think you're going to enjoy it when you're in deficit.
You're certainly not going to enjoy it. I mean, like, don't get me wrong, there's everybody, even when you absolutely love the process, has those days when they go, I really just want to lay on the sofa.
Of course, yeah.
Or, you know, I really don't fancy eating that meal. But, you know, 99% of the time, you should absolutely love what you're doing. And like you said, if you're not loving it in a surplus, you really are not going to be loving it in a deficit. So, you know, get your mindset into the correct place and ensure that you really want to do it. And it's absolutely not failing to say, do you know what? I've tried. I tried to be strict, but didn't like it.
Yeah, I agree. That's actually a better option, in my opinion, I think, to sort of just say, you know, at a certain point, I'm not enjoying it, this is not for me, and sort of backing out and, you know, going and finding a sport that you actually enjoy doing.
Exactly, absolutely.
Yeah, sure. From a sort of, I mean, I know I see this trait a lot with really successful bodybuilders and people that I've interviewed in the past, but do you think there's like this main trait that I see is basically people that come from competitive sports, and primarily competitive sports that are like not team sports, so that you're just your own person and you have to work hard yourself. So I know that you came from a sporting background, but do you think there's any sort of other characteristics that you see in both, maybe both female and male, that sort of, you know, really respond well to not only weight training but the process of bodybuilding and really nailing it when it comes to a contest prep phase, both in terms of mindset and physique?
Yeah, I mean, obviously from a physical perspective, if you've got some sort of background with sport, it doesn't even have to be like to an extreme level, but if you've been very, like, you know, quite sporty as in your youth or whatever, the concept of muscle memory is very real. So you will be able to get into the rhythm of training and regain and build quite a lot of tissue, more so than somebody who's an absolute beginner who hasn't done it at all.
Yeah.
So from that perspective, yes, having a sporty background is advantageous. Not necessary. It may just take a little bit more time. Like I said, you know, muscle memory is a very powerful tool.
Yep.
I think, you know what, in my experience, it's one of those things where you can get somebody who's never even been into sport, they all of a sudden find it, and they're sort of the last person on earth that you'd expect to be able to tailor their mindset to this routine, but they can do it. And I think primarily it comes down to the goals and the want of that person. I believe with everything in life, not just training and dieting, if you really want to achieve something, you will. So the only thing that's going to get in your way is that real determination. Like, a lot of people will say they want to do a certain thing, but actions speak a lot louder than words, so to speak. And that's the case with this as well. So I think, I've got clients that have literally just been a middle-aged mum who's gone, sod it, want to try something new. And it's been absolutely incredible to see them switch on in terms of mindset. And they've kind of shocked themselves, and they're like, God, I'm actually doing this. And it's like, because they really believe that they want to. And then obviously having competitive history and that competitive edge is a must, I think. You can't want to compete unless you're competitive. That's just logical. So having that sort of innately is always a benefit as well. But I think just deciding you want to change and having the determination and the willpower to do it is the key mental aspect that you need. So don't just say you want it, truly want it, and then you absolutely can just switch your mind to whatever you want to do. And I believe that.
No, I do agree with that, absolutely. I think, you can almost see it in some people that aren't even sporty, but like have huge dedication and work ethic for maybe their job or their career or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
They're able to work like hugely long days, get up at 5 a.m. and things, that just like do stuff that some other people just really wouldn't do.
Exactly.
And like work through phases of not enjoying their job and things like that, and those are the people that tend to do really, really well. And exactly. I think I remember being told, like, sort of, when sort of trying to get to those really lean levels of contest prep shape, it almost becomes who's mentally strong enough to get there, as opposed to sort of what process are you doing, sort of how well are you refeeding, what's the approach you're taking, things like that. It's almost down to like who's mentally strong enough to see it through to the end, and that's what separates you.
I was just to say, absolutely, like, especially in those sort of more testing times, it will come down to the mental aspect, and if you can dig in, then you're going to prevail, and if you can't, then you just simply won't. So you're absolutely right.
Cool. Wicked. So I see this a lot, again, both male and female, and I actually had it literally yesterday with a client that I unfortunately had to sort of say, either we find a later show or we're not going to do it this year. I sort of had to turn them away, and it's upsetting. I'm sure that you have plenty of situations like this with you and Jordan and clients that approach you. But, when it comes to people and their start points, why do you think so many people are messing it up? And what do you think is your advice for people when, if someone's out there looking to start a bodybuilding prep, and what's your advice in terms of starting points, and why do you think people just continually mess it up?
Yeah, okay. I think, well, for a start, if you're an absolute beginner, your start point is simply going to be your start point. You haven't spent time building that to anything. So you just, in that case, you just have to, like we said a moment ago, get a regimen, get a regime, stick to it, and go and start. So that's that start point. Obviously, we can't alter that one because you never know when you're going to start.
Absolutely.
So in terms of kind of like more experienced competitors for the stage, it's all comes down to the previous show, really.
Agreed.
And it's important that you don't. It's such an important window after that show when you've got down to a good lean body weight. Don't rebound, and that's when the most issues arise, because a lot of people will have worked so damn hard that they then can't control themselves potentially for like a month post show. They can't get back on track, so their training goes out the window, their diet goes out the window, they put on too much weight too soon, and then before you know it, they've put on a hell of a lot of fat. They then sit there, they then try to start an off season, but they've already gained too much fat, so they're starting a surplus phase already 30 pound over stage weight, and then they try to start their next prep, who knows, 40, 50 pounds over stage weight.
Yeah.
The fat has sat there for a year, and then you're kind of in trouble. So I think to really get a good start point, you have to view your whole year as a prep and as a setup for the next event.
Yeah.
Like for me, 365 days of the year, I am focusing on my next goal, and the decisions I make today are going to affect the outcome of the competition at the end of the year. So, yep, we're human and we can have downtime, but if you really want to progress, you have to be on it 99% of the time and have to be ensuring that the decisions you make now are going to be the best decisions at the end of the year to start that prep. So you have to think of it as a long-term process and almost give yourself a game plan. Say I'm going to push up 10 pounds, nice and steady. I'm then going to see where I'm at, see what I'm looking like, assess my body fat, assess my muscularity, my strength, my well-being, then make another decision. So it's good to set yourself, bi-weekly, 4-weekly targets, and then you can assess, reevaluate, and then that way you're always on top of what you're doing. You're in control, so nothing will ever escalate or get out of your control, and that's the only way you can really ensure to start appropriately, and of course giving yourself enough time to prep. And for my clients, I wouldn't really take anyone on for less than 16 weeks for a show, because I would absolutely rather have too much time than less time.
Yeah, agreed.
For females, although I say I prefer a 20-week prep, in honesty, because typically females will obviously, sort of anabolics aside, they're less likely to be using them, so we don't have that as a tool. But also, in my experience, females tend to have worse rebounds than men in a lot of cases, so their start point is sometimes less optimal. So I favour, for men and women, 16 to 20 weeks. Just the longer the better, really, because then the coach or yourself can really be in control. And like I said, it's better to have too much time than too little time.
Yeah, definitely. I'm sort of definitely on the agreement there with sort of having more time than you need, because we can obviously allocate for periods of time of slower progress, a week of high stress, a week of just constant issues, being ill or something like that, rather than sort of having this tight-knit protocol which gets you there on perfect time, but then you lose 2 weeks and then it's all down the pan.
Sadly, the perfect prep very rarely happens, so definitely give yourself a little bit of leeway.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously it's all relative as well with regards to obviously females generally being lighter than males, but is there any sort of general recommendations that you'd sort of say to a competitor that's finished a prep as to how far they should stray away from their stage weight? And are you more inclined to sort of say, let's use the scale as a tool, but let's use images and body fat calipers more as opposed to the scale? Which do you sort of favour in a gaining phase in terms of maintaining or controlling excess body fat gain?
Yeah, I think as a general rule, I would say don't get more than maybe 15 to 20% over your stage weight.
Okay.
So say a female is on stage at about 120 pounds, for example, I certainly wouldn't really want them to be pushing more than 20 pounds over that, because there's simply no need. For guys, again, it's dependent. If you've got a guy who wants to be a super heavyweight and they've got a ton of muscle that they need to add, weight moves weight in the gym. And, a surplus, food is our most anabolic tool most of the time, so a surplus will definitely guarantee that you put on more muscle. So for a guy who really needs to push up in weight, potentially they can go a bit higher than that, basically. So get a bit further from condition. Also, it's person dependent as well. If somebody is very good at getting lean, or stubborn fat isn't an issue for them, they could push up a little harder. If stubborn body fat is an issue, or condition has been an issue in the past, be a little bit more tentative, a little bit more cautious, and stay closer to your stage weight. But as a general rule, sort of 15 to 20%, I would say. Initially, once you've finished a comp prep, obviously you are sitting, hopefully, incredibly lean. and probably a little bit lighter, than you would do, because you always drop quite a few pounds from water and stuff for the stage. So I think it's best to get someone out of that scary, super lean danger zone, if you so to speak, pretty much instantly. Within a good, you want to be 7 pounds up, because then you're going to feel good there, and that's still super lean, like super lean. So get out of that hole initially, and then from there you can put the weight on steadily over your time frame, and obviously that depends on when your next competition is, but definitely take it in very small increments. But so does that answer the question? Is there another bit to it?
No, that's brilliant. I think the only other thing was to the when you're sort of pushing body weight up alongside as opposed, like, more, are you more inclined to look at images and, like, for example, if they're getting very close to that 15 to 20% rule and you think, can we push it a bit more, would you look at images?
Absolutely. Sorry, I got a bit carried away there. I forgot the other half of the question.
That's all right.
No, absolutely. Like, with my clients, obviously it's online, so we have to use. I do use scale weight because it's a good tool. If I had a face-to-face, like myself and Jordan, we prep each other essentially, and I actually don't weigh myself, or very rarely weigh myself, because there's simply no need. Like, I know what I need to look like, and nobody is getting out the body fat calipers on stage and going, hang on a minute, great physique, but your subscap's still over 4 or whatever. No one cares about these objective measures on stage. So, but for online clients, and as a good rule of thumb, I would go by the scales. But like you said, when someone's getting to that limit, where potentially on paper you would think, oh, we need to rein this in, but the visual is really, really important to me, because a picture speaks 1,000 words. So if they've still got, a real tiny waist, they've still got lines through glutes and legs and whatnot, then body fat is in a controllable place. I don't particularly use calipers or any sort of bod pod or anything, but that's more just because the average client doesn't have that available to them.
Agreed, yeah. Okay.
Someone can get a bod pod scan every 4 weeks and they want to, or they can get body fat calipers read. Absolutely get them read. It's just a great measure. But typically I would go by the visual and also by their feedback. If I say to them, if someone's got a stubborn area, say it's their stomach, they might hold fat on their abs. So I'd say, okay, pinch that for me. How does that feel? Is that good? Is that okay?
Okay.
Obviously, you've got to trust your client. They might just say, yeah, it's great, because they want more food. But visual, good feedback, and scales to some extent are all good rules, definitely.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think that, when it comes to body fat measuring and things like that, we know that DEXA and things like that will probably provide you with some more accurate numbers, and you're not going to say to your clients in their protocol that they have to get a DEXA every month.
Of course,
that
would just be ridiculous.
Yeah, so it would be silly. So the power of images is great, and I think that I've learnt that even with myself recently, when sort of people would say that you can only go about this amount above your stage weight and things like that, and taking into account that I'm very young, or like 20 years old, so I think you've got to take into account where the person's at and their ability to build muscle, and obviously someone that's like got a higher training age and also is older might be sort of staying close to their stage weight, because they're going to look more to next time how they can retain the muscle that they've got better, because that's going to promote a better physique.
It's so person dependent. It's also health as well. I mean, like my older clients or whatever, it's not healthy to sit really heavy if it's like crap, rubbish. You don't want to put excess pressure on your heart, your blood pressure, or anything like that. For a younger guy, like you said, don't rub it in that you're 20 either. Thanks for that. You could push up, and you've got a hell of a lot of time, so you could push up, gain more weight than we're sort of talking about now, but you'd still feel great on it because you're nice and young and healthy, and you've got a load of time to get it off. And also your whole body and responsiveness to training, like you've just mentioned, will be potentially higher than the older individuals. So yeah, your ability to put the weight on, be healthy and get it off is probably going to be greater than somebody who's over double your age. So yeah, all these factors really need to be counted into your prep. So yeah, definitely person dependent.
I think it's great that we've mentioned that, because unfortunately what I'm seeing, Corinne, is like the younger guys like myself and things like that will follow the very evidence-based perfect approach, and they won't ever push their body weight up enough because they're too scared to push it up. They're too scared to gain body fat, and they're too scared to stray away from this perfect ideal of like, I need to be 15-20 pounds above my stage weight or something like that. And whilst that's great and it's awesome for quite a lot of competitors, for the younger guys that can really pack it on, they're missing out on this phase. Exactly. Like, they're missing out on the huge amount of growth that they could have.
And what's the goal? Like, if the guy doesn't want to put more size on and actually just wants to look pretty good all year round, sure, stick to the rule. But if you actually want to be a bodybuilder or put on muscle, you've got to do what you've got to do. And nothing builds mass better than food and weight. Simply, it doesn't. So, there are rules in inverted commas, but do what you've got to do to reach your goals, and don't, listen to everything, take on advice, but don't ever try to do anything by a textbook, because it doesn't work. That's not reality, unfortunately. And we've all done that, I'm sure. Yeah,
no, definitely. Whilst we're on the topic of images as well, I'd like to ask you a question as to, we know that, like, and people listening to this will relate, if I take an image with like the window facing me and white light glaring onto me, I'll look way different to if I take an image post-workout with a pump, loads of carbs in me, all good. Is there any sort of like guidelines that you give to people that do their images, or are you just sort of requesting that they're in the same lighting every time and roughly at the same time of day? Is there anything that you do with that?
Just consistency, really. Like you said, I mean, I know there's places in my house when I take progress pictures where I look terrible, so I avoid those like the plague. And there's places where I look better. But I mean, when I'm looking at, like I said, because it's online and I don't see clients in person too frequently, all I need is consistency. So it doesn't really matter where that is, but just be consistent, so then at least when I'm comparing it, is actually comparable. So it's best to have, people aren't stupid. Take the picture, have a look. If it's too bright and too stark, then it could be blurring you out. So choose somewhere that's got, a nice bit of natural light where you can see enough detail and it's just relatively consistent, because that's all you need, really.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, the idea of taking pictures in very harsh lighting is cool, in the idea that if you look absolutely diced in horrible lighting, then you're probably going to be extremely diced under stage lighting. But at the same time, I think it can be quite demoralizing for people if they continue to take pictures in horrendous lighting. I know that if I took all my pictures in horrific lighting, I'd be like, oh, no, that bit's not coming in as... I'd be really upset. So I think a good combination of having like both some like pretty favourable lighting and then just your consistent same every week or same bi-weekly photos is probably the best way to deal with that.
I think just try and find an area in your house which you think is where the photo reflects the reality to the best extent, really. Because I don't want to, like you said, you don't want to look at pictures of yourself in terrible lighting that makes you look worse. But again, it's also not good to sort of find a spot where you look fantastic, so your coach thinks you're a lot leaner or something than you are. So again, just try and find a spot that is the most representative of what you look like, and then you'll be able to see progress. So but absolutely agree. Some photos are just demoralizing.
I think photos are great as well, because like half the time I have people clients say to me like, oh, I look way different when I'm training, or I look way different in the mirror, and then they'll take
Yeah.
photos and they're very, very honest, and like they just show exactly what's there. So you know that if someone's like, you know, when people start to get lean and they start seeing more vascularity, they're like, wow, I'm really, really lean. And then they take a photo and they're like, wow, I'm not actually that lean at all.
Yeah, it was just a vein.
Yeah, it's just a vein, yeah. And all their other friends in the gym will say they're stage ready because of that vein, and then...
Yeah, they're shredded.
Yeah. That's ridiculous. Anyway, so, yeah, next question. In terms of so we got the start point and people are sort of in a good position to get prepping and get fat loss going. In regards to the rate of loss that you look for competitors, is there any sort of guidelines? And if you look at a contest prep, do you have phases potentially, like at the start? Do you see a greater rate of loss in terms of percentage of their body weight or pounds per week? And then do you see things slow down? And yeah, just cover that question first and I'll do a side note onto that.
So assuming that somebody's come to me in a relatively good spot to start their prep,
yeah,
I prefer to see the bigger weight chunks coming off at the beginning of the prep, because logically you're fattest at the beginning of the prep, so you can lose the most without it being a detriment.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you get closer to the stage, I will be looking for smaller weight drop.
Mm-hmm.
That's to ensure, obviously, like I just said, you've got less fat at the latter end. So if you're having these big drops, that's likely to not be a very good sign. It's likely to be a chunk of glycogen, which you need for training, or it's likely to be muscle mass, and we don't want to be eating into that.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I prefer the bigger jumps at the beginning, maybe sort of 2 pound maximum. I don't really think you should be dropping more than that in a week.
Agreed.
And then that should sort of steady off. And then at the latter end, it's actually okay to just drop a very, very small amount, like half a pound or even less than that sometimes. Or sometimes at the latter end, it's okay to see a no change in weight, but the visual might have changed. So, yeah, I prefer the larger chunks at the beginning and then tapering off. As a general rule of thumb, the whole process should never be sporadic. It should also always be nice and steady. If you lose a ton of weight, something's wrong. So something needs to be rectified. So generally, nice and steady drops throughout. And then I can intervene if someone was to lose a hell of a lot of weight. Say we made a dietary change and their body just responded. And they dropped, or perhaps it was a bit too much of a cut, who knows. And they dropped a lot of weight. I would immediately intervene with a refeed. And I'd prefer to do that with a day of higher carbs. Because I want to refill the tank. I don't want to say to them, go and have a cheat meal. They'll have one cheat meal. I haven't got any regulation over that. It's probably going to be quite high in fats and potentially not very carb dense. I would favour that person over a training day, preferably. I gave them a set meal plan where they're hitting, I don't know, X amount of grams of carbs in every single meal. So for the day, it's a real high carb refeed, which I can then regulate. And then that's to restore glycogen, push their weight back up, and almost reset and just bottleneck that big drop, and then we regulate from there on. So that's my approach to it.
Awesome. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and I'm definitely on the side of favouring a sort of a refeed approach, which is structured as opposed to sort of saying if you go and cheat. I think from a psychological perspective as well, it's almost more beneficial because, you know, with the refeed aspect, it's like you still eat very similar-ish foods to what you would have been doing on a normal day. So with a cheat, like it just opens the light at the end of the tunnel for you. And if you think that you have like a cheat every week, you're constantly psychologically looking forward to that. So you become like buried in the darkness of dieting throughout the week. And exactly. It's like, you get a glimpse of a meal, and then it just sort of ruins your consistency, I think.
You become reliant, and I think it can alter your focus, like you said, if you get a taste for that cheat or whatever. And obviously it's person dependent. I've got clients that I can 100% trust to have a cheat meal, or I can even outline a cheat meal and say, go to Gourmet Burger. You know, there are other great burger places out there. Have a burger and sweet potato fries, have a milkshake and have a slice of cheesecake, and they can do that. I've also got clients that I've spoken to They'll admit it themselves. If I give them a cheat meal, they will binge.
Yeah, not good.
Like, but the thing is, the good thing is they recognise it. I recognise it. Therefore, we don't go there.
Yeah.
Because that loss of control isn't something we need. And therefore we can control it, like you said, by having a higher refeed day, which is maybe cleaner foods, doesn't act as a trigger, still elicits the same change. So definitely, although it's person dependent, I do favour a refeed structured approach.
Yeah.
Because again, it's just better for the coach as well, isn't it? Like, it's good to have regulation.
Yeah, no, agreed. With the refeed approach, do you keep that in throughout the sort of the entire process, and is that something that you only use when someone's dropped a greater amount of body weight than you initially wanted?
Yes, I would never start a comp prep. Personally, this is just my view on it.
Yeah.
I don't understand preps that are every Sunday you have a cheat meal or every Sunday you have a high refeed day.
Yeah.
I think you have a refeed when you need a refeed.
Okay.
Like, it's, the whole idea
agreed.
of prep for me, it's reaction, not prediction.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to predict that on a Sunday you can have 500 grams of carbs because you might not have dropped any weight that week. Why then am I topping you up? Topping what up?
Yeah.
Then we're avoiding 2 weeks of progress. So no, I would never go in with a set plan. I don't believe in weekly cheat meals or weekly refeed days. As and when, and like I said, it's based on the week. It's based on the reaction from the change, based on how hard they're training. If they want to elicit a bigger response, then they will. They might progress faster than I think and be having regular refeeds. Who knows, even every 3 or 4 days if necessary. But it's not about me guessing that now. It's just about me waiting to see what happens and reacting to the change.
Yeah, that's interesting. I do really agree with that in terms of, like, I guess you could call it an auto-regulated approach to dieting, because you're only situating a refeed when you need one, as opposed to just having it in a protocol just sat there. I think, the issue with that is because, you will just end up slowing progress if you're just refeeding for no reason. And also, like, obviously in the literature as well, it's sort of been stated that from a physiological perspective, the benefits of having a 1 day refeed are not that great in terms of re-regulating hormone profiles and sort of leptin and ghrelin, things like that. It's not been too beneficial. So, people that argue, there's physiological effects, well, not really from a 1 day refeed.
It's kind of negligible, yeah. So I don't adhere to that for all of those reasons, really.
Yeah. I mean, when you're getting leaner and leaner with competitors, do you see if they drop a good amount in a week and they need a refeed, do you see that you can get in more food as they get progressively leaner, like more higher carbohydrate days? Absolutely.
In actual fact, the closer you get to the stage, the more food you're going to be eating from a refeed and cheat meal perspective.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah,
absolutely. Like I said at the beginning of a prep, you're fattest, so you don't need, your hormonal responses, as you just mentioned, leptin, they're fine. It's only when you're at the dog end that you do need to make interventions, and the leaner you get, the more you can eat. So it's almost a bit of a backwards thought, because people be like, oh God, I'm 4 weeks out, I'm going to stop all my cheat meals. And I kind of think, well, why did you have them in at 16 weeks out, and now when you need them, you haven't got them? So it's kind of a bit of a backwards thought from the traditional. But yes, and I have, even with some clients, increased their daily food when we've got closer to the show, because they've got that lean that actually they can have 50 more grams post-workout every single session, because if they don't, we're going to be tearing into tissue. So again, like we just said, it's reacting to the body and giving it what it needs when it needs it. And that's how I view prep. I don't care about the numbers. In my opinion, if you want to step on stage and bring the perfect look, you simply do what you need to do when you need to do it.
Yeah, agreed. I think that's something that's overlooked. Like we said at the start, you can have this perfect prep plan, and it's never going to work. Like, you can't purchase a 12-week prep online and not have no one schedule it, like, or sort of set it out for you. It's not a purchasable ebook plan. You can't do that. It's it's something that needs to be very tailor-made, and as a result, changes need to be made sometimes on like a daily basis.
Absolutely. Now we're coming up to sort of the first comp actually for us was the weekend just gone. We had 3 people compete at the weekend, so that's kind of start of the comp prep.
Yeah.
And actually, I've got literally written down in front of me now. I've got a piece of paper with my comp prep clients and the ones that I need to watch. I'm watching their weight every day, because if I miss a trick, I'm going to miss a trick, and I don't want to. I want to get it right for them, and they want to get it right. So we say we have a weekly check-in or whatever, but like you said, as we get closer, if your body is being less predictable, as most of them are, and when you get leaner, I've found that the body is horribly unpredictable. It's scary. It's so fascinating. So you have to watch it literally 24 hours to check that you're on track, and check that you're making the right decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. So in terms of expenditure throughout a contest prep, we know how beneficial sort of excess expenditure is in terms of creating a deficit. And I know that you yourself is sort of the king of expenditure. Like in your videos with Jordan, you're constantly moving, and I'm sure that your expenditure is pretty high in some instances. But with regards to how you see expenditure through sort of cardio and neat with regards to your clients and setting up contest prep protocols, do you favor LISS over HIIT, and which sort of situations would you use them in? And alongside that, do you get your clients to wear step trackers, and what's your opinion on step trackers?
Yeah, absolutely. Every client that comes to me, I recommend that they use a Fitbit or an app, or even just a really cheap pedometer, just something that can track something. I know, they're not that accurate, but if it's within affordability, to get a £5 stepper, fantastic. So get that on them straight away. And that's for comp prep people, or not comp prep. It's just people to look to improve their physiques. And then they can kind of get a gauge as to what they roughly do on a rest day and what they roughly do on a training day. And I will use that as a fat loss tool, because people believe in comp prep that they always say, oh, my metabolism slowed down. No, you've just got lazy. And that's the truth, because people won't do it deliberately, but as they get more tired, they're inevitably going to want to do less. So instead of going for a walk outside, it's a nice sunny day, the sofa will seem a hell of a lot more appealing. So instead of expending, if it's 1,000 steps because they've literally just potted outside, they haven't, and that will impact the your expenditure for the day. So exactly. So I absolutely like to track the meat in some ways, because that is so important. It's great for just allowing that little bit extra food as well throughout the day.
Agreed.
So even if you're not trying to lose weight, if you're someone that can't eat very much, just being a little bit more active will actually keep your food a little bit higher, which is going to have then a positive impact both on you mentally, enjoyment for food, and also yourself in the gym. In terms of cardio, like formal cardio, again, we do what we've got to do to get lean. When I first started competing, trust me, I'm not naturally lean.
It's surprising that.
Everyone always says to me, oh, you're genetically very lucky. And I think, well, no. I've just worked very hard for a long time. And I've done hours and hours and hours of LISS and cardio. LISS and HIIT. I like both. I find that HIIT is harder to ensure that the client's doing it correctly. So I will actually get clients to film their HIIT sessions for me and send it to me. And half the time I can't believe I'm watching HIIT because it looks like LISS. So in which case I'll then have to say, no, this is how you do it properly. And then that elicits quite a nice change. But as long I'll usually specify a rep range, a heart rate range. So I'll
Okay.
say do LISS, and I would like it to be at 135 BPM,
Okay.
or I want you to do HIIT, and on those sprints you absolutely must hit 165 BPM without foul as an absolute minimum. And then that way, at least I'm giving them a specified target, so I can guarantee they're probably trying to reach that.
Yeah.
So again, I don't actually favour LISS or HIIT. I like both. I think they can both be a nice challenge. It depends on the person. Some people enjoy HIIT, some people don't, and therefore won't do it properly. So is it more beneficial to give them LISS? Probably. But again, a good mixture I feel is usually good, because then it's not hours and hours of just walking.
Yeah. No, agreed.
So
I don't like
HIIT
that.
quite enjoyable. So I like a good mixture. I haven't personally found with clients that one works better than the other.
Okay.
I think it's just person dependent, and if you know that client is going to absolutely go at that HIIT, use it. If you're not sure that they're going to be able to, or it's going to take away from their weight sessions, maybe it'll make their legs more fatigued or something, then don't use it. So just be smart. Try them both and have feedback with the client, because again, it's about finding what works for that individual.
Yeah,
But
I agree.
It's energy in, energy out. So
That's it. Yeah.
yeah,
I think that's what sort of more people need to understand. It's like HIIT isn't like special. There's nothing special, fat loss special about it. It's expending calories. I think for anecdotally from myself with HIIT, I find that the inroads it takes into my recovery for weight training is too great. I just find that I feel just like really ill after it. Like I feel like my CNS has just been suppressed massively. So I don't think when I'm in a deficit, I don't think my body can recover from it. However, I do almost like doing a little bit of HIIT actually when I'm sometimes gaining like one session per week, just from sort of like feeling good and like feeling healthy, and being able to do reps of 10 without falling on the floor like with my heart.
absolutely.
I do like that, and from a comp prep perspective, I think that a sort of a split of both, and I've found sort of with clientele myself, I think actually I found, I don't know whether you can relate or not, but I found females deal with HIIT from a recovery aspect a little bit better, but I'm not too sure as to why that is. Maybe it's more type 2 fibers or something like that would have potential impact.
I think I do agree. I think potentially that's just down to the fact that females are lighter and smaller. And the weights that they're lifting in the gym comparatively aren't actually as CNS taxing as what bigger guys are doing. So say you've got a 200-pound guy who's squatting 200 kilos for sets of 6, your females aren't going to be as strong comparatively, so their CNS isn't going to be as taxed. So I think it might just be down to a logistics sort of thing, actually.
Agreed.
But
That's a good point.
you're right. I've found the same. So it must be, women can actually recover better from higher rep sets as well. So that could obviously impact on their ability to recover from HIIT too.
No, I agree with that, and it's interesting with like females training as well. Like I sometimes get form videos from females as well, and they'll do like a set of 6 on squat, and the first rep will look like a 1 rep max, and then they'll continue to get 5 more, whereas a guy would just get that 1 and rack it, and die. Like it's very interesting. One more final question on cardio as well. Is you with people sort of situating their cardio, is there any sort of general recommendations that you give to when people do it? And if people have the time and it's feasible, would you recommend splitting cardio AM versus like AM cardio versus PM weights, or just splitting it in general as opposed to doing it post or pre-workout?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, I'd favour, if you've got to do them both in the same day, I'd favour splitting them. So one in the AM, one in the PM. But like I said previously, if you're at that stage where you've just got to do what you've got to do, and you need to add in 20 minutes cardio post-workout because of a time factor, and also you're really needing to do quite a bit of cardio to get lean, put it in. In an ideal world, I wouldn't do any cardio on a training day at all.
Okay. Yeah.
But definitely try to split them as far away from each other as possible. That way you don't get any conflict of anabolic signaling. So if you're doing cardio after your workout, is there any point? Because you've just done an hour and a half session, your heart rate's elevated, you've switched on all these anabolic pathways, you then want to go away and eat to recover. If you're just going to keep your heart rate vaguely elevated for another 20 minutes doing cardio, it was going to be elevated anyway because you've just finished the training session. So it's almost negligible. Again, prior to the weight session, I wouldn't want to take away any fuel from my lifting. So in an ideal world, split them. But at the dog end, do what you got to do and ignore the rules.
Yeah, no, absolutely agreed with that. Cool. So one final question, Corinne, and we'll sort of wrap up things. I know that I had about 1,000,001 questions, but we've managed to get through quite a lot of them, which is good, and this has definitely been awesome. So final question, me watching like your videos and with Jordan, etc., I see you obviously training very, very lean, but also what stands out to me is your ability when you diet down or when you're potentially off cycle. Your ability to retain strength is awesome. Like, you seem to retain lifts really, really well. So is there any sort of tips as like mindset hacks or potential programming tools that you've used when it comes to retaining your strength? And alongside that, if it's okay to answer, have you seen much variance in strength retention in natural versus assisted athletes during a comp prep phase?
Okay, well, I'll answer the latter question first.
Okay.
Yes. If you're assisted, it's so much easier to retain strength.
Yeah.
Even as you go off cycle, especially for a long period of time, like it's fine for guys that cruise for maybe 6 weeks. They don't typically drop very much strength at all because it's only a 6-week phase, and the compounds are still going to be within the system for at least a couple of weeks of that.
I see. Okay.
So they won't experience much of a drop in strength if they're stubborn enough to retain it. If you come off for a longer period of time, you will lose a big chunk of strength, and also your recovery capabilities are going to be quite impaired as well. So again, that's an indirect effect because your training is going to have to change. So that's the answer to that one. Assistance is always going to retain more strength. From my perspective, in honesty, my strength doesn't actually hold very well at all. I'm currently I'm glad it looks that way.
It does look like you train at least very hard to hold it on.
Like, obviously I train, my training ethic doesn't change at all, and I will still dog it out, and I'll do my absolute best in every single session. But my strength does drop quite significantly, and for me I've learned this time actually that's a body weight thing. So I won't be looking to stay this lean in an off-season phase again. Because I've lost a lot of tissue, and now I'm fighting to get it back, and I will get it back. But my thought process now, and the process that I'm going to do after this comp prep, is I'm going to push my body weight up hard out the gate in order to retain that muscle, because I don't want to lose it again. From a powerlifting perspective as well, it's not advantageous for me to remain that lean and lose that much tissue, because then I've just stepped 3 steps backwards and I'm never going to step forward. I don't just want to getting back to this place. I want to progress. So actually, after this comp, my intention will be to push up my weight hard, and I'm going to be doing a powerlifting meet in November, and then that's when I aim to take my 550 total. Bold statement, that's the first time I've announced it. So it's on the cards now. So in order to do that, straight out the gate from this competition at the end of June, I will be pushing my body weight up massively, and I will not be remaining this lean, because it's not advantageous to the goal. So I would always do my best to retain as much strength as possible, and I will always train super hard. But I have lost quite a lot of strength and quite a lot of muscle mass, and that's not something I'm going to do again. That was a mistake. So a word of advice: don't do that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we all learn lessons, and we at least you've learnt that now, and you know that next time that won't happen. I guess that it's sort of from staying lean, going off the PEDs and trying to retain everything is going to be extremely difficult. At the best of times when you're a natural athlete, if you stay lean, you're not going to retain numbers that you had when you were a little bit heavier. Like, I've lost sort of, I think, 12 pounds now, and my bench press is taking a hit. My pushing moves are taking a hit.
Weight moves weight, unfortunately. Yeah. And literally, if you're, because just to put it into perspective, at the moment I'm sort of, when I ended, before I went back on assistance, I was 140 pounds. This time last year was actually below my stage weight.
Yeah.
This time last year, when I competed in March at the competition in powerlifting and got the 502.
Yeah.
I was weighing 174 pounds, I think.
Oh, fuck.
So I'm 34 pounds under that, and you can imagine if I stepped under a bar and tried to squat anywhere near 200 kilos, I'd crumble. Like it would just be appalling. So weight moves weight. And the thing I've realised is I can't take that much of a step back in my lifts, because I can't start at step 1 every time, because I want a 550 total in 30 weeks. So I've got a hell of a lot of work to do this summer. And staying lean is cool, don't get me wrong. I like being lean, but it's not my goal. It's more important for me this year to re-establish myself as a powerlifter. So I'm going to ignore the fact that I don't like being less lean. Yeah. I'm just going to focus on the goal.
Yeah, I think psychologically some people do find it hard. I know that people find it hard pushing up their body weight, like we discussed earlier on. It is like mentally it's a task, and it's a struggle, and I can imagine for females as well, and I know with my female clients that I work with, you don't almost get the same benefits as guys do. Like for some females, filling out a t-shirt isn't actually that enjoyable.
No, that's not a life goal of mine.
No.
No, exactly. I mean, guys get bigger, and then all their mates in the gym are like,
say you're bigger.
Hench.
Yeah.
When someone tells me I look hench, I think, oh God. It's not. No female wants to be called a unit. Yeah. So just a word of advice to anyone: when I'm bigger, if you come up to me, say you're looking powerful, say you're looking strong. Don't tell me I look hench or like a unit. Word of warning there, right?
Word of warning: if you see Corinne at Body Power, don't say she looks hench.
Yeah, powerful. Right. I like that word.
Powerful, awesome. Okay, cool. Well, yeah, Corinne, thank you very, very much for your time today. I thoroughly appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been great.
No worries at all. And I'm glad you enjoyed the chat. I think a lot of both male and females will take a lot away from this. I know that I sort of said to people on Instagram that I'd be interviewing you, and I know that a lot of people are excited to have you on, and a lot of people love your work. So to you and Jordan, keep doing what you're doing, and to the listeners as well that listen to this, thank you very much for listening again. If you do have any sort of other questions for me or Corinne, leave them in the comment section on the YouTube video, and I'm sure that if Corinne gets a chance to see them, I'm sure we'll have a look at them. I'd like to also highly recommend that if you did like what sort of Corinne said on this podcast, or if you did like the JP podcast, I highly recommend that you head over there to their site, which I will link below. Highly recommend that you immediately sign up as a member. It's a very low cost. I think it's still $5.99 per month, isn't it, Corinne?
$6.99.
Yeah, that extra pound. But yeah,
I'll make it worth your while.
I highly recommend that you subscribe to their site. The videos on there are not only super motivating but very educational, and you can take home a lot, especially with regards to supplementation, both for natural athletes and assisted athletes, and just a wealth of information on there. So I highly recommend that. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Unless you've got anything else to leave, Corinne, then we'll end it there.
Yeah, no, just thank you for having me. I hope that was helpful to
Amazing.
some degree. And yeah, great. Please ask questions, and always happy to help and do what we can.
Awesome. Well, guys, I'll link all of Corinne's bits below in terms of her socials and where you can find her if you're not already following her. And that's it. That's a wrap. So we will see you back in episode 32. Thanks very much for listening. And yeah, take care, guys.